Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, as you know, we have organized a series of lectures on societal change and process. And in democratic society, law plays a dominant role. So we will start with law and societal change and process with Mr. Anup Prakash. He is a practicing lawyer in Supreme Court and High Court, and also he has done lot of work on RTI. So I think his knowledge and experience will help us to understand the law in a perspective of societal change. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. Prakash for EduSet lecture. Welcome you, sir. Yeah, start.
Here I start the interaction between law and the societal change. Question is, which comes first, law or the society? Because society needs law as well as law needs society, both way. Society comes first, and for its regulation, it develops some kind of control on human conduct that is known as the rule. Rule that is codified, then it becomes law. Question is that what is law itself? The rules prescribed by society for controlling the human conduct. This is the feature of primitive society. Societies which are very simple, where no complication is, people live together, their needs are very minimal, so they don't need complexity of the laws. If we move to medieval societies, then it is the sovereign who dictates the rule of action or civil conduct. That is known as rule of law, and it is a feature of medieval society. And if we come towards the modern society, then all kind of enactment, ordinance, statute prescribed by the legislative power is known as law. The next question comes, what is the societal change? And societal change is some kind of political, social, economic transformation of the society. And law changes accordingly, because the growing needs of society needs that law should change accordingly and cater the needs of a fast growing society. That way societal change is, it can be other way defined that the societal change implies development of society. If society develops, then societal change occurs, more and more laws are needed, and law becomes a little bit complex. Simplest society requires simplest laws of common practice known as custom, customs. In simplest societies, the administrative system, legislation and adjudication vest in a single authority. But if we look into the complex societies, they need codified law. We didn't know about the air laws prior to 20th century, but after the aeroplane was invented, we needed that. So the way our system grows, the way society develops, development of law takes place. And the modern societies are guided by the same. That is the cherished standard of rule of law. What is change? The story of change. If we attribute change in the society, we can just find out certain landmarks in our entire system, setup, or throughout human history. And one can be the French Revolution, from where the concept of freedom, equality, and justice came. And next one was the landmark, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen in 1789. Next was, but important thing is, even there it left the women and slaves without rights. And it is very ironical that March of Versailles was done by women only. So what I want to say that in primitive societies, the society consists of men. Women were treated to be subordinate, and that system continues. And now, in the throughout historical development of society, they have got their power. And why this situation was? Because earlier the system evolved on might. That might was the muscle power, not the mind power. And in today's society, it is the mind power which rules. And in case of mind power, there is no discrimination between women or men. So they are at equal pedestal, and that is of today's system. This is the today's society, and which requires the legal setup that is that is based on the rules of equality. If we think about the changing society, this is the Indian Constitution. If we think about Indian Constitution, we have made India a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and we are ensuring justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, and we have adopted, enacted, and give ourselves this constitution. What does it mean? It is not the rule of the sovereign. It is not the rule of one man. It is the popular collective will of Indians that has reflected itself, and we are being governed by ourselves. That's what the law is as of now in today's perspective. So the system develops, the law develops, society becomes more and more complex, law becomes more and more complex. That way law and societal change takes place. Now, if we come to what regulates the human behavior the most, is it the law or something else? It is not the law which regulates the human behavior the most. It is the belief, the norms, which are in terms of the informal social controls and which are maintained through social sanctions, that controls the human behavior most, and the law comes next. The law is a formal proclamation of norms, and it may comprise even more. That's what law is. If we look about the primitive sources of law, there are uncodified laws. Those uncodified laws finds their place in religious texts and in the works of critics. The religious texts, say for instance Vedas, the Shuras, Hadiths, and so on and so forth. And works of critics means the Samhitas written on that, which appreciate laws, and they appreciate the laws in context of that particular system and society. And the law caters the need of that particular society of that particular time. So that way law evolves. If we think about the codified law is not something of today. Way back in 2300 BC, Code of Justice was evolved by Sumerian king Uruk Agna of Lagesh. This is an earliest prototype of a law of government. It relieved tax for widows and orphans and protected the poor from usury of the rich. Why this codified law in the very earlier period? Because those days the system was based on very few things, say agriculture, slaves, women, and there were not much scope on which the system might have thought. That's why even if law is codified, then the codification is not of a versatile type. It is limited with 1, 2, or 3 things. Next comes the code of Uru Nomu of Ur, that is in 2050 BC. Next, if we think about the Lipit-Isher Code of 1934, 37 rules dealing with torts, trespass, and slaves. You can see that the earlier codified laws were very simple, but the way within a society develops within a span of few hundred years, you may find a better list, bigger list in that particular codification system. So that's how law evolves. If we put aside this codification one way, then we also demarcate certain landmarks in our history, which shows this societal change. And first one is in 1989 French Revolution. It was the French Revolution whereby the society tried to change the law. The monarchical system was replaced, at least tried to be replaced, by a system efficient, equal, based on fraternity, justice, equality, and modern concept of the human rights that may be said to be evolved from that date. But as I earlier said, that even in French Revolution there was no scope for slaves or women, because this was something, a male dominated world even on that date. So we had French Revolution, but we didn't have any revolution in medieval thinking even on that date. And gradually, slowly, this was achieved in the course of development. Next, if we think what influenced the most the societal setup and what forced the system of governance throughout the world, that is the communism, the Communist Manifesto of 1948. The Marxism later became a religion. It gave another view of thinking. It gave another setup of the society, of the laws, of the system, of the administration. Instead of the rule of riches or rule of the haves, they tried to have a rule of haves not. So the entire setup got a new thinking that was never ever available in the history of mankind before 1848. Next, if we go on thinking that what could have changed the thinking and social setup and laws, that is the Russian Revolution of 1917, whereby the first communist state was established by the revolution of the haves not. So the prediction of Marx gradually, slowly turned into a truth that yes, this can happen and this will change. If we next come to another landmark of history which forced the thinking throughout the world, that is the nuclear bombing, which ends the Second World War of 6th August and 9th August, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And thereafter, if you think what could have changed the entire setup, then the Second World War changed the thinking about the entire human society, evolution and other things. There was change from war to humanity. There was a change from thinking individually to universally. And concept of United Nations came into being, and the entire world's constitutions and other laws were attuned to the spirit of the United Nations. Indian independence can also be one of such instances where a long era of colonial rule ended, and Indians, after thousands of years, aspired to live in a country which is free and republic, democratic republic, where the common man can aspire to achieve any of the highest post within the system. It is not the birth, it is the work which can give him the opportunities to achieve excellence throughout. Another such instance can be the Declaration of Human Rights. And here the important thing comes, because our entire fundamental right system given in Indian Constitution emerges out of the Declaration of Universal Human Rights. Entire 1948 Declaration, if not copied ditto, at least the spirit is present. So man is valued in Indian Constitution. It is not the birth, race, religion, caste or sex, but it is the human which has been given the maximum value. So it is a big instance here. If we think about the Indian Constitution, here the law changes the society. We, the people of India, gave Constitution to ourselves, and that way society changes the law. That changed the law. If we think otherwise, after having Constitution, in the Constitution we abolished untouchability, we abolished title, we went for a sovereign socialist democratic republic, and what India as a society was not, that we made through our Constitution. So here the law is changing society. So the change in law and change in societal setup, they go simultaneously. Law influences society, and society either adopts the same or changes the law if it is against the spirit of the society. So both way, the law and societal change go side by side. In the modern history, just some 20 years ago, we saw the collapse of Soviet Russia. A communist regime was changed, that got collapsed, and the liberal policies were adopted even in China. Disintegration of the system, and Francis Fukuyama, he predicted the end of history, because for him that was the conflict between the north and south, or say the liberals and communists, or that way. So that conflict once the ended, and with that history ended. So that way a new social setup in the world came into existence, and that is another instance of the societal change. If we look into Indian system and think about the Indian position, it is the fundamental rights as well as the directive principle of social state policy, which are the key for changing the system, our societal setup, and law is changing the society, as well as when law is changed, the view of the society is taken into account. And how it is done? The Article 32 of the Constitution, which was called as the very soul, heart and soul of the entire Constitution by Dr. Ambedkar, that can be used by anybody. A man, a common man, human rather, he can take up the cause of anybody else. It is not his personal grievance which is supposed to be settled, but the collective grievance can also have an address in the system. So our system provides through Article 32 as well as 226 of Indian Constitution such kind of remedies which results some in the betterment, in the judicial recourse, in the addressing of the problems of the society. Another instance might be the social welfare legislations. We have labor laws, we have rent control laws, we have pollution regulatory authorities, we have so many authorities related with environment, and so those social welfare legislations work in favor of the common man. And through these welfare legislations, we try to make society more and more responsive, equitable, just, and efficient. But here also one of the problem is the issue of legal literacy. We might be under the system, under the setup, but most of the Indians are not having thorough understanding of the laws, because laws are so complicated. And the moment you take birth, you are governed by the laws only. Take out any of the instances, any of the subject, there is a law for that regulates your behavior, that controls your conduct, that may work for you or may work to your detriment. It depends on the situations. And unless and until you are aware about the laws, you are not able to efficiently appreciate the same. So the issues of legal literacy in India, our Indian setup, are very, very important. And a few years back, there was a campaign launched by our Prime Minister to educate our society more in legal issues. But that is yet to be done. Next, if we come, the one of the best legislation that have been made is right to information. And because I am an RTI activist, so I can speak on that with the command. So that has made the entire RTI setup, has made the common man at par with the members of parliament and state legislatures. You, being the most empowered citizen of a state known as India, can do what our representatives are doing. We are empowered, and it is also a fundamental right recognized under Article 19(1)(a), because the entire RTI Act is emerging out of that. And you have access to each and every information which state has, because information basically belongs to the common man, and state is a trustee of the same. So by this act, the Right to Information Act, the Indian man, common Indian citizen, has been empowered to such extents that cannot be otherwise have been thought. It is some kind of Magna Carta of civil liberties in modern India. Next, if you think right to education. Right to education, when each child of a certain age below 14 is having a right to be educated on state expense, then it means universal literacy for India in next few years. And if a child is educated, he is well fed, the way midday meal schemes are going on, and then he can contribute better for the development of the society. So here law is taking recourse for a societal change and making each child educated, each child getting good nutrition. The law can make healthy, equitable, and just society. Another instance can be the food bill that is proposed. If the food is ensured, then most of the problems are taken care of, because it is the root cause of most of the problems. Hunger can result into revolution. Another instance can be the NREGS, National Rural Employment Guarantee Programs. That is a legal right. I want employment, it is my legal right. So I not only want employment, I can enforce that I should get employment, at least for a certain period. So such kind of instances are the proactive postures of the legal setup, which is acting in favor of the common man, which is changing the society, and India is doing excellently in those areas. Thank you.
RTI, you talked about RTI.
Yeah.
So how the RTI has impact on the society in recent times?
Common man feels himself empowered. If he goes in an office, he goes with the confidence that he cannot be misled by the concerned officer on the desk. If he is being misled, he has a right, his fundamental right, to ask for the very file, to ask for the very information, and it can get it from the coffers of the administration and get it verified whether the sayings of that particular officer is correct or not. So that RTI has made common man very, very empowered. And yeah.
How this is going to help the people, especially living in the rural areas?
The problem in India, especially in rural area, is not the government information is not coming to them. The problem is the government programs are not coming to them. There is a bottleneck in the system, and those who need it the most are uneducated, poor. They can't afford to hesitate, because if they are hesitating, they are losing that particular day's wages, so they otherwise can't get much to eat. So that is the problem. It is not something that the RTI suo motu will solve that, but gradually when this system, the delivery mechanism becomes efficient and transparent, then at least they will be able to find out where the lacuna lies, and there they can pressurize the system to deliver. So it will enhance the efficiency by enhancing the transparency in the entire mechanism.
That is true, but we find that even due to maybe complexity of the things, or you say unawareness of the people, do you think this whole process is a very simple? Yeah, it needs to be made more simple.
The process of filing RTI,
Yeah,
as on day, it is not that much complicated.
that is true, but how we can make it more simple? Suppose somebody want to get information on particular things from say health department,
Yeah.
like what kind of job is a particular doctor need to be performed, because they say we have a number of patient more than we can do. So in that case, will they get the information? Will RTI be helpful in solving such a problems? Because many of doctors ask patient come tomorrow, especially in the higher places like AIIMS, others good hospitals. They are, no, we can't take you. We will give you the date for operation 2 months later, 3 months later. Even some cases we find that 1 year later. So how this could be sorted out by using the RTI?
Yeah, very important question. Here we cannot force that doctor that you should give a date prior to what you are giving. But what can we do? We can file RTI that how many doctors were present on a particular day in the particular department, how many patients were being checked up by them, and how many staffs were there, how many hours of work they put in, how many prescriptions they had written. So if they have done much and there was actually no time for them to give a nearer date, then that can be justified. But if they didn't do much work, at least on records, if there were ample doctors, still they are giving 2 months time, then that cannot be justified. Mere word of the mouth cannot justify such a long date. But here RTI can't force the doctor to give a shorter date. We can only force the system that, yeah, doctors are there, doctor-patient ratio is not that much high, that is being said by the doctor, and workload is not that much what is otherwise being shown by them. So indirectly, it will force them on moral grounds to look more patients and give shorter dates.
Okay, now this, suppose this is irregularity in one of the leading hospitals. So in that case, the RTI will be filed in that hospital or in the ministry concerned?
Both way. If you file in the ministry, and ministry is not the agency which is supposed to give the information,
Okay.
then the very RTI application shall be forwarded from the ministry to the hospital, and if there is a public information officer, he will deal it, and as per the act, each one is a deemed public information officer. So if Mr. X, professor of gynecology, is having that particular information, that will be transferred to him, and he is supposed to give the inputs on that very information.
Okay,
So
but-
ultimately it will be given to me.
So file anywhere, that thing will come to that.
Yeah, of course.
In that case, here the question lies. In that case, that person may manipulate the rules, manipulate the information available.
Yeah, what you are saying is correct, but then there is a recourse for further RTI. First time I filed RTI in ministry because I was not knowing
Okay.
that Mr. Dr. X is supposed to give me the
Yep.
information. Once they gave me, they have given me the information, and I'm not satisfied, and I'm sure that there is twisting of the facts. I may file next RTI on the very concerned department with the very concerned person and go for the checking of the files. And I can verify the records, I will verify the information given in earlier RTI application through the subsequent RTI application, and these two are separate RTI applications.
Okay.
So there is patience is needed.
Patience
and
is needed.
yeah, patience, as well as you are supposed to follow up. Follow up is also needed.
Okay.
Both way information can be procured.
Okay. So, and what is the punishment if the information is reported?
Punishment clause section 20 of RTI Act says some punishment, but that is not, if I say, properly utilized or implemented. So punishment is 250 rupee fine on the particular public information officer for the days of delay, as well as there is, if there is something deliberate concealing of the fact, negative entries can be made in his service record, so there may be problems in his further promotions. These way law provides the recourse, but unfortunately that recourse is not being followed even after the various orders of Central Information Commission. So that is a sad aspect. But what the need of the hour is to make the public information officer more closer, pro-closure rather pro-concealing. So if that way system works, then it is good. If otherwise it works, then the law cannot do the change. It is law together with the collective will can do the change.
Okay. Do you think that after the RTI, the things are going smooth, the things have got corrected itself, like people are, the person who are in authority, they are taking corrective steps? It's as usual before that?
Not as usual, there is change. And what the change is, because I am very much active in this part,
that's right.
earlier they were using pens and making file notes. Nowadays they are using pencils.
On the file?
Yeah. So, and the pencil remarks subsequently they are changed by the pen, but if you use pen and cut, then there is a cutting, and if that goes in public domain, then yes, he had some other opinion earlier, now opinion is changed. That presumption that that will go into the public domain. But if now neatly first time it is done by the pencil and next time it is done by the pen, then
Noting is being done by pencils.
use in sensitive departments, as my experience is concerned. Not in all departments, but certain departments are very corrupt, if I put that way. So there they try to cover their loopholes. I won't take names because that I'm not supposed to do.
That we also don't want. But the processes that being followed, that we want to know.
Yeah, so that is one of the process. Instead of using the pen, pencils are being used.
Okay, this is one change.
The one
The
change,
other change?
other change, they apply their mind, before writing the notes.
Okay.
So file noting is not that much casual as it used to be nowadays.
Okay.
Next is there is some action. They are under constant vigilance of the RTI activists, because all are not filing RTI. Only selective portion of the enlightened citizenry are filing RTI. But if I am an RTI activist, it is not my only filing RTI for myself. I can take up 10 social issues, and for that I can file RTI. So there is a constant pressure on them to perform. They are performing or not performing is not an issue, but there is a pressure, and due to this pressure things are now changing. At least the change has begun.
Okay, now one thing I don't know, why is there need of RTI activist when this is a tool of individuals? Individuals can do it.
Yeah.
So where the need comes to an RTI activist? And it's a very popular. Many youngsters are becoming RTI activists, and you are also feeling proud saying this.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to know about it.
Actually, this is
And many of our students watching may also want to join.
Yeah, actually
the group.
RTI is my expertise.
Okay.
And otherwise it might not have been my expert, but RTI is my expertise. So what I feel, somebody is activist by nature,
Okay.
and all are not activists. Knowing a law and using the same, these are two different things. So I may be put in difficulty, but I may be having 5 other works. I might not find this to be good enough to spend my time, and I might not
So
do
are-
that. I'm saying of a common man.
Okay.
I here represents the common citizen.
Right.
So majority of them thinks that way. There is nothing, not much harm, but if I fight, then there may be more harm.
Okay.
So that is utility analysis.
So RTI activist people do they charge, or they fight on behalf of common man for the benefit of the common man? Because many of the RTI activists, I find they are lawyer, advocates, or human rights activists. So I also feel there are some kind of collusion between professions. This time I am helping you, you get client for me.
Both way. Personally, I get fellowship, so I work on
So
RTI.
there are some kind
Yeah.
of benefit. That's
Yeah,
why.
of course that is. I am here, I am an RTI activist. That is also one of the charms. Maybe for so many. So social recognition is one of the associated charms for being an activist.
So can a person file an RTI for this, knowing this also? How many RTI activists are working with a motive to serve the society and then with a motive to gain benefit?
But
Can we get information? regarding
question is, who's the public authority to supply this? You can't find a public authority to give this
this? So
information.
there should be a kind of regulatory body like this.
I don't think so. Why I don't think so? Because it is the activists who keep on watching.
So the only purpose is, if the public authority is doing wrong, they should be caught. If the private people are doing wrong, they
No,
should
I
be
don't think
debt-free.
I don't think this can be put as wrong. There may be certain motives, but ultimate motive is to help the society. If I am helping society, I may get recognition. It is not that if I am helping society, I shall be put in any kind of difficulty. So that is the difference. There the difference lies. And because before a few years, even the members were supposed to be bribed to ask a question in parliament. The very scam.
Yeah.
Now there is no such need to bribe somebody to get your question asked in parliament.
Okay.
You are as per with them. You can have all access to all the informations.
So, well, friends, we would like to conclude our discussion here. And the very important facet of our society, we came to know the law, how the law makes a difference. And as Mr. Anup Prakash said, the RTI has brought a lot of difference at the level of working at the level of thought, at the level of executions. So I hope in coming days it will be more beneficial for the common man. So with this hope, we conclude the lecture, and I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on your behalf, I thank Mr. Arun Prakash for giving such a wonderful lecture. Thank you.